The corridors of Buckingham Palace were quiet that evening. Too quiet? Royal Guard James Whitmore stood at his post near the East Gallery, his red uniform pressed sharp, his face expressionless. He had been trained not to react, not to flinch, not to question, but something felt wrong. It was just after 7 in the evening. Most of the staff had gone home. The Queen had retired to her private quarters hours ago. The palace, usually alive with footsteps and whispered conversations, now echoed with an eerie stillness. James heard footsteps approaching, steady, confident, not rushed, but purposeful. A woman appeared at the end of the hallway. She wore the standard palace staff uniform, navy blazer, white blouse, sensible shoes. Her hair was pulled back neatly. She carried a small leather bag under her arm. Everything about her looked normal, routine, but James noticed something. A detail so small, most people would have missed it. Her hand was pressed firmly against the bag, not holding it casually, pressing it, like she was protecting something inside, like she didn't want it to move or make a sound. The woman walked toward him, her eyes locked forward. She didn't glance at him, didn't acknowledge his presence. That was unusual. Staff members always nodded, always showed respect to the guards. It was tradition. It was protocol. James's pulse quickened. His training kicked in. Observe, assess, act only when necessary. She was 20 feet away now, 15, 10, then he saw it. A glint of gold. Just a flash, barely visible where her bag wasn't fully closed. Something inside was catching the light from the chandelier above. James stepped forward, not aggressive, not confrontational, just a small shift in his position, enough to block her path. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his voice calm and professional. "May I have a word?" The woman stopped. For just a fraction of a second, her expression changed. Fear, anger, it was gone too quickly to tell. Then she smiled. A tight, controlled smile. "Of course," she said. Her voice was smooth. "Too smooth? Is there a problem?" "I need to check your bag," James said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. The woman's smile faltered. "I'm sorry, but I'm running late. I have clearance to be here. I'm Miss Harrington. I work in the Queen's private office." James knew most of the staff by sight. He had seen this woman before. She did work in the palace, but that didn't mean she had permission to leave with palace property. "I understand, Miss Harrington," James replied, his tone steady. "But I still need to see inside your bag." The hallway seemed to grow colder. The woman's hand tightened around the leather bag. Her jaw clenched. For a moment, James thought she might run, or scream, or try to push past him. Instead, she did something unexpected. She laughed. A short, nervous laugh. "This is ridiculous," she said. "Do you know how long I've worked here? Do you know who I am?" James didn't move, didn't blink. "Yes, ma'am. I do. And I still need to see inside your bag." Before you hear what happens next, if you love true stories like this, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an incredible story. The woman's face changed. The mask slipped. Her eyes grew hard, cold. "You're making a mistake," she whispered. James reached for his radio. His hand moved slowly toward his belt. He needed backup. This was escalating fast. That's when Miss Harrington opened her bag, and what James saw inside made his blood run cold. Inside the leather bag lay a brooch. But this wasn't just any piece of jewelry. It was the Cullinan V heart brooch, one of Queen Elizabeth's most treasured possessions. A stunning, heart-shaped diamond brooch, part of the Crown Jewels collection, was given to Queen Mary and passed down through generations. James had seen it once before, displayed during a state visit. It had been behind bulletproof glass, surrounded by security, and now it was in a staff member's handbag. Miss Harrington saw the recognition in James's eyes. She saw him reach for his radio. And in that split second, she made a choice. She ran. Her heels clicked frantically against the marble floor as she bolted toward the nearest exit. James didn't hesitate. He pressed the emergency alert on his radio and took off after her. Security breach. East Gallery. Staff member fleeing with royal property. The palace erupted into action. Alarms didn't sound. Royal protocol kept things discreet, but every guard in the building received the alert. Doors began locking automatically. Security cameras swiveled to track movement. Miss Harrington was fast. She knew the palace layout better than James expected. She turned sharply down a side corridor, her bag clutched tightly against her chest. The brooch inside caught the light with every step. Glittering like a captured star, James rounded the corner just as she pushed through a service door. He followed, his boots pounding against the floor. His heart hammered in his chest. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not here. Not in Buckingham Palace. They entered the service stairwell. Miss Harrington stumbled on the first step, her heel catching. She kicked off both shoes and kept running, now barefoot on the cold stone stairs. James gained ground. He was trained for this. She wasn't. "Stop," he shouted. "There's nowhere to go." She didn't stop. She reached the ground floor and burst through another door into the kitchen area. Staff members froze, wooden spoons and dish towels in hand, staring as the chase exploded into their workspace. Miss Harrington grabbed a prep cart and shoved it behind her. Pots and pans crashed to the floor with a deafening clang. James leaped over the obstacle, never breaking stride. She was heading for the delivery entrance. James realized it immediately. If she reached that door, if she made it outside, everything became more complicated. The press, the public, the scandal. He couldn't let that happen. Miss Harrington's hand reached for the door handle. Her fingers wrapped around the cold metal. She pulled. The door didn't budge. Locked. The automatic security protocols had sealed every exit. She spun around, her back against the door, trapped. Her chest heaved. Tears streamed down her face, smudging her mascara. The leather bag hung from her shoulder, the golden brooch visible through the open top. James stopped 5 feet away. He didn't approach, didn't threaten. He simply stood there, blocking her only escape route. "It's over," he said quietly. Miss Harrington slid down the door until she sat on the cold floor. Her hands trembled. "You don't understand," she whispered. "You don't know what it's like." "And tell me," James said. 2 more guards arrived, positioning themselves at the other entrances to the kitchen. The staff had been ushered out. It was just James, Miss Harrington, and the stolen brooch. She looked up at him, her eyes red and desperate. "I've worked here for 12 years. 12 years of loyalty, of service. Do you know what they pay us? Do you know how hard it is to make ends meet while surrounded by all this wealth every single day?" James kept his expression neutral. He had heard justifications before. Everyone had a reason. Everyone had a story. "My daughter," Miss Harrington continued, her voice breaking. "She's sick. Really sick. The treatment she needs, the hospital bills. I've tried everything. I've begged for help. I've taken extra shifts. I've sold everything I own. But it's not enough. It's never enough." She pulled the brooch from her bag. It sat in her palm, catching the fluorescent kitchen lights. Even in this harsh, utilitarian space, it was breathtaking. Priceless. "This one thing," she said, staring at the diamond heart. "This one piece that the Queen probably hasn't worn in years. It could save my daughter's life." The room fell silent. Even the guards at the door seemed to hold their breath. James looked at the woman before him, at her tear-stained face, at her trembling hands, at the desperate love of a mother who had reached the end of her rope. And then he did something that would change both their lives forever. James knelt down, slowly, carefully. He brought himself to Miss Harrington's eye level. "What's your daughter's name?" he asked softly. Miss Harrington looked up, surprised by the question. "Emma," she whispered. "Her name is Emma. She's 8 years old." James nodded. "How long has she been sick?" 2 years. The words came out broken, heavy with exhaustion. "It started with headaches. then seizures. They found a tumor. The surgeries, the medications, the experimental treatments. Insurance won't cover most of it. I've maxed out every credit card, borrowed from everyone I know. There's nothing left. She held out the brooch toward James. Take it. Arrest me. I don't care anymore. I just wanted to save my little girl. James looked at the brooch, then at Miss Harrington, then at the two guards standing at the doorway. He made a decision. Give me the brooch, he said. Miss Harrington placed it in his hand. The diamond heart felt heavier than it looked. Heavier with history. With responsibility. With the weight of what it represented, James stood and turned to the other guards. Escort Miss Harrington to the security office. Make her comfortable. Get her some water. I'll be there shortly. One of the guards stepped forward. Sir, shouldn't we? I'll handle this, James said firmly. Take her to the office. Now, the guards helped Miss Harrington to her feet. She looked back at James, confusion and fear written across her face. She expected handcuffs. She expected the police. Instead, she was being treated with an unusual gentleness as they led her away. James stood alone in the kitchen, the Cullinan V heart brooch in his palm. He stared at it. This small piece of gold and diamond had caused so much trouble, but it also represented something bigger. Something that James hadn't fully understood until this moment. He had to do something that went against every rule in his training manual. James left the kitchen and walked through the quiet palace corridors. He didn't go to the security office. He didn't file his report. Instead, he went up, higher into the palace, toward the private quarters, toward the Queen's residence. He knew this was insane. He knew he could lose his job, lose his pension, lose everything. Guards didn't simply walk up to the Queen's private rooms. They didn't request audiences. They didn't break protocol, but sometimes, James thought, protocol wasn't enough. He reached the corridor outside the Queen's private quarters. Another guard stood there, young and wide-eyed. The kid couldn't have been more than 22. Whitmore, the young guard said, recognizing him. What are you doing up here? I heard there was an incident downstairs. I need to speak with Her Majesty, James said. The young guard blinked. You what? Mate, you can't just... It's urgent. It's about the brooch. The young guard's eyes widened further. You recovered it? Yes, but I need to speak with the Queen directly. James, that's not how this works. You report to the head of security. He reports to the private secretary. The private secretary decides if there's no time for that, James interrupted. Please, just ask if Her Majesty will see me. 5 minutes. That's all I need. The young guard looked torn. This was completely irregular. But something in James's expression, something in the urgency of his voice, made him reconsider. Wait here, the young guard finally said. He disappeared through the door. James waited. His heart pounded. The brooch felt like it was burning through his pocket. What was he doing? This was career suicide. This was foolish. But when he thought of Miss Harrington's face, when he imagined her 8-year-old daughter lying in a hospital bed, he knew he had to try. The door opened. The young guard reappeared, his expression one of complete disbelief. Does she see you? He said quietly. I don't know how. I don't know why. But Her Majesty will see you. James straightened his uniform. He took a deep breath, and then he walked through. The door into the private sitting room of Queen Elizabeth II. The room was smaller than he expected. Warm, comfortable, filled with photographs and personal touches that made it feel like a home, not a palace. And there, sitting in an armchair by the window, was the Queen herself. She was dressed in a simple cardigan and skirt, her signature pearls around her neck, her hands folded in her lap. She looked at James with sharp, intelligent eyes that had seen 8 decades of history. Your Majesty, James said, bowing deeply. I apologize for the intrusion. You have my brooch, the Queen said simply. Her voice was exactly as he'd heard it on television. Precise, measured, but not unkind. Yes. Your Majesty? James pulled the Cullinan V heart brooch from his pocket and held it out. The Queen didn't reach for it. Instead, she gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit down, Mr. Whitmore," she said, "and tell me why you're here." James sat. Every muscle in his body told him this was wrong. You didn't sit in the presence of the Queen unless invited. But she had invited him. So he sat. "Your Majesty," he began, choosing his words carefully. "The woman who took your brooch, her name is Miss Harrington. She's worked in your private office for 12 years. The Queen nodded slightly. "I know Miss Harrington. She's been quite reliable. This is unexpected." "She has a daughter," James continued. 8 years old, Emma. She's been battling cancer for 2 years. The medical bills have destroyed them. Miss Harrington has exhausted every option. She's desperate." The Queen's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. She reached for a pair of reading glasses on the side table and put them on, then looked at James more closely. "And you're telling me this because I believe she's a good person who made a terrible choice out of love," James said. "Because I have a daughter too, Your Majesty. She's 10, and I can't imagine watching her suffer and feeling powerless to help." The silence that followed was heavy. James wondered if he had overstepped. If he had just ended his career with a few honest sentences. The Queen picked up a small bell from the table beside her and rang it. A private secretary appeared almost instantly, as if he'd been waiting just outside the door. "Martin," the Queen said, "please bring me Miss Harrington's employment file. Also, contact Dr. Patterson at Great Ormond Street Hospital. I need information about a patient named Emma Harrington, age 8. Cancer treatment." Secretary nodded and disappeared. He didn't look surprised. After decades of service, perhaps nothing surprised him anymore. The Queen turned back to James. "Tell me what happened." James recounted the entire evening. The moment he noticed something was wrong, the chase through the palace, Miss Harrington's breakdown in the kitchen. He left nothing out. When he finished, the Queen sat quietly, her fingers steepled beneath her chin. "You could have simply reported this through proper channels," she said. "Yes, Your Majesty. You could have had Miss Harrington arrested immediately." "Yes, Your Majesty. Instead, you came to me, directly, breaking numerous protocols in the process." James swallowed hard. "Yes, Your Majesty." The Queen removed her glasses and set them aside. "Do you know why this brooch matters to me, Mr. Whitmore?" "It's part of the crown jewels, Your Majesty. It has historical." "It was my grandmother's," the Queen interrupted gently. "Queen Mary gave it to me when I was young, not at an official ceremony, not for any grand occasion. She gave it to me on a Tuesday afternoon when I was feeling particularly sad about something I can't even remember now. She pinned it to my dress and told me, 'This heart is strong, just like yours.'" The Queen's gaze drifted to the window, where the evening light was fading over the palace gardens. "It's not the most valuable piece I own," she continued. "Not the most famous, but it reminds me of her, of love, of family, of the things that matter most." James felt his throat tighten. He had expected anger, disappointment. Instead, the Queen was sharing a memory, a piece of herself, which is why the Queen said, turning back to him, "I understand why Miss Harrington took it. A mother's love is the strongest force in the world. It makes us brave. It makes us foolish. It makes us steal priceless brooches if we think it will save our children." Martin returned with a file folder and a note. He handed both to the Queen and left without a word. The Queen opened the folder first, scanning Miss Harrington's employment record. 12 years. Never late. Never a complaint. Exemplary service. She closed the folder and picked up the note. Her eyes moved across the page, and James saw her expression shift. "Emma Harrington," the Queen read aloud. "Diagnosed with glioblastoma, 2 surgeries. Currently undergoing experimental treatment. Prognosis is uncertain. Estimated cost of continued treatment, £200,000. Insurance coverage, 30%. She set the note down and looked at James. "That's why she took the brooch." "Yes, Your Majesty." The Queen stood. James immediately rose as well. She walked to the window and looked out over London. The city was lighting up as night fell. Millions of lights representing millions of lives, each with their own struggles, their own desperate moments. When I was crowned, the Queen said softly, I made a vow to serve my people. All of my people. Not just the wealthy, not just the titled. Everyone. I've tried to honor that vow for 70 years. But sometimes, she paused. Sometimes I forget that service isn't just about ceremonies and state visits. Sometimes it's about a single mother and her sick child. She turned to face James. What do you think should happen to Miss Harrington? James felt the weight of the question. The Queen was asking his opinion. Him, a guard. I think, James said carefully, that she should face consequences for what she did. But I also think mercy matters, Your Majesty. Justice without mercy isn't justice at all. The Queen smiled. It was small, but genuine. You sound like my father. He used to say something similar. She walked back to her chair and picked up the brooch from where James had placed it on the table. The diamond heart sparkled in her palm. What happens next, Your Majesty? James asked. The Queen's smile widened, just slightly. Something I should have done a long time ago. 20 minutes later, James found himself back in the security office with the Queen herself. He had never seen anything like it. The Queen of England, walking through the service corridors, accompanied only by her private secretary and one very confused guard. Miss Harrington sat in the office, her face buried in her hands. When the door opened and she looked up, she saw James first. Then her eyes traveled past him, and she saw the Queen. Miss Harrington shot to her feet so fast, her chair fell backward with a crash. Your Majesty, her voice broke. She dropped to her knees. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. The Queen walked forward slowly. She stood before Miss Harrington and did something that made every guard in the room freeze in shock. She reached down and gently helped Miss Harrington to her feet. Stand up, dear, the Queen said softly. We need to talk. Miss Harrington was shaking. Tears poured down her face. I don't understand. I stole from you. I betrayed your trust. You tried to save your daughter, the Queen said simply. Tell me about Emma. For the next 10 minutes, Miss Harrington talked about her daughter, about Emma's bright smile and love of horses, about how she wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up, about the day the diagnosis came and how their world collapsed, about the endless hospital visits, the treatments that made Emma's hair fall out, the nights spent crying because she couldn't take away her daughter's pain. The Queen listened to every word. She didn't interrupt, didn't judge, just listened. When Miss Harrington finally fell silent, exhausted from her confession, the Queen spoke. I have a personal fund, she said. It's separate from the Crown estate. Separate from taxpayer money? It's my own money, accumulated over decades from various sources. I use it for private charitable work that I prefer to keep discreet. Miss Harrington looked confused. Your Majesty, Emma's treatment will be covered, the Queen said. All of it. The experimental therapy, the medications, the hospital stays. Everything. My private secretary will arrange it with Great Ormond Street Hospital tonight. The room went completely silent. Miss Harrington stared at the Queen, her mouth open, unable to form words. But Your Majesty, she finally whispered. Why? After what I did? I tried to steal from you. The Queen smiled sadly. You tried to save your daughter. Those are very different things. She paused, then added, and I'm partially to blame. You've worked in my household for 12 years, and I never knew you were struggling. I never asked. That's my failure, not yours. But the brooch is just an object, the Queen said. A beautiful one, yes. One with sentimental value. But it's just gold and diamond. It can be locked in a vault. It can be replaced. She reached out and took Miss Harrington's hand. Your daughter cannot be replaced. No child can be. Miss Harrington collapsed into sobs. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from months, maybe years, of holding everything together. The Queen let her cry, still holding her hand, patient and steady. When Miss Harrington finally composed herself, the Queen continued. However, there are consequences for what you did. Actions have results, even when the intentions are good. Miss Harrington nodded, wiping her eyes. I understand. I'll accept whatever punishment. You'll be suspended from your position for 3 months, the Queen said. With full pay? You'll use that time to be with Emma during her treatment. When you return, you'll work in a different department. A fresh start, perhaps. Your Majesty, I don't deserve what you deserve. The Queen interrupted gently, is a chance to be a mother without drowning in debt. What you deserve is hope. And what I deserve is the reminder that my role isn't just to wear a crown. It's to serve, even in small, personal ways. She released Miss Harrington's hand and turned to James. Mr. Whitmore, you broke protocol tonight. You came directly to me instead of following proper channels. James straightened. Yes, Your Majesty. I take full responsibility. Good, the Queen said. Then you'll take responsibility for this as well. I'm assigning you to be the liaison between the palace and Miss Harrington's family during Emma's treatment. You'll ensure she has everything she needs. You'll report directly to me. Weekly updates. James blinked in surprise. Your Majesty, I'm not sure you cared enough to break the rules for a stranger, the Queen said. That tells me you're exactly the person for this task. She turned to her private secretary. Martin, please prepare the necessary documents. I want Emma's treatment to begin immediately. Use the discretionary fund, and ensure this remains private. No press, no publicity. This is between us. Martin nodded and left to make the arrangements. The Queen looked at both James and Miss Harrington. What happened tonight stays in this room. Officially, the brooch was temporarily misplaced and recovered. Nothing more. Miss Harrington. You have your suspension story for friends and families say it's paid leave for personal reasons, Mr. Whitmore. Your role continues as normal, with the additional assignment I've given you. Your Majesty, Miss Harrington said, her voice barely audible. How can I ever thank you? The Queen picked up the heart-shaped brooch from the desk where James had left it. She looked at it for a moment, then held it out. Thank me by being with your daughter. Thank me by fighting for her. Thank me by never giving up hope. She paused, then added softly, and perhaps one day when Emma is well, bring her to meet me. I'd like to meet the girl who reminded me what truly matters. Miss Harrington took the Queen's hand and kissed it, tears flowing freely again. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. The Queen smiled and gently pulled her hand away. Now go. Call the hospital. Tell Emma that help is coming. As Miss Harrington left, escorted by a guard to help her gather her things, James remained. He looked at the Queen. This woman he had guarded for years but never truly known until tonight. Your Majesty, he said quietly, that was the most remarkable thing I've ever witnessed. The Queen pinned the brooch to her cardigan, right over her heart. Mr. Whitmore, I've met presidents and prime ministers. I've attended thousands of ceremonies, but tonight reminded me of something important. 6 months passed. James Whitmore stood in the same corridor where everything had begun, but this time he wasn't alone. Beside him was Miss Harrington, and holding her hand was a little girl with bright eyes and a pink headband. Emma Harrington looked healthy. Her hair had grown back, dark and curly. Her cheeks had color. She bounced on her toes, excited and nervous. Mummy, is the Queen really going to meet me? Emma whispered. Miss Harrington smiled, squeezing her daughter's hand. Yes, sweetheart. She asked to meet you specially. James had watched Emma's recovery week by week. The experimental treatment had worked. Against the odds, against the statistics, it had worked. The tumor was gone. Emma was cancer-free. And every week, James had reported to the Queen. Watching her face light up with each piece of good news, the door to the private sitting room opened. Martin, the private secretary, gestured for them to enter. Emma walked in holding her mother's hand, her eyes wide as she took in the room. And there was the Queen, standing by the window, smiling warmly. "Your Majesty," Miss Harrington said, curtsying. Emma attempted a wobbly curtsy that made the Queen chuckle. "Come here, Emma," the Queen said. Settling into her armchair and patting the seat next to her, Emma looked at her mother, who nodded encouragingly. The little girl walked over and sat down, her legs swinging because her feet didn't touch the floor. "Do you know why I wanted to meet you?" the Queen asked gently. Emma shook her head, her eyes huge. "Because you're a very brave girl," the Queen said. "Your mummy told me how brave you were through all your treatments. How you never complained, even when things were difficult." "I was scared sometimes," Emma admitted quietly. "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared," the Queen said. "It means you keep going even when you are scared. That's true courage." Emma thought about this, then said, "Mummy says you helped us. She says you're the reason I got better." The Queen glanced at Miss Harrington, then back at Emma. "The doctors helped you get better. And your mummy, who never gave up, I just made sure you had what you needed." From her cardigan, the Queen unpinned something, the Cullinan V heart brooch. Emma's eyes widened at the sparkling diamond heart. "This brooch belonged to my grandmother," the Queen said. "She gave it to me when I needed courage, and it's given me courage many times since then." She held it up to the light, where it sparkled brilliantly. "But I think perhaps it's done something even more important. It's reminded me what really matters in life." She looked at Emma seriously. "I'm going to keep this brooch as a reminder. A reminder that sometimes the most important thing we can do is help someone when they need it most. Even in ways that aren't very royal or official." "It's very pretty," Emma said. The Queen smiled. "Would you like to see it up close?" Emma nodded eagerly. The Queen handed her the brooch carefully. Emma held it in her small hands, turning it gently to watch the light dance through the diamond. "When I'm older," Emma said suddenly, "I want to help people too. Maybe I can be a doctor, and I can help other kids who are sick, like I was." The Queen's eyes misted slightly. "I think that would be wonderful, Emma. The world needs more people who want to help others." Emma handed the brooch back carefully. The Queen pinned it back to her cardigan, then reached over and straightened Emma's headband. "Now," the Queen said, "I believe Cook has prepared some special biscuits and tea. Would you and your mother like to stay for a bit?" Emma's face lit up. "Really? Really?" the Queen confirmed as tea was brought in, and Emma chatted excitedly about her favorite horses and her return to school. James watched from his position by the door. He saw Miss Harrington's gratitude. Evident in every glance at the Queen, he saw Emma's joy, simple happiness of a child who had survived something terrible and come out the other side. And he saw the Queen not as a monarch, but as a woman who had chosen compassion over protocol. After an hour, it was time to leave. Emma hugged the Queen goodbye, a spontaneous gesture that made Martin nearly choke on his tea end. The Queen hugged her back. "Stay well, Emma," the Queen said softly. "And remember, you're braver than you know." "Thank you, Your Majesty," Emma said. "For everything." As they left, James escorted them back through the palace. At the exit, Miss Harrington stopped and turned to him. "You know," she said, "you saved my life that night. Both our lives. If you had just arrested me, if you had followed the rules, I don't know what would have happened." James shook his head. "I just did what felt right. The Queen did the rest." "No," Miss Harrington said firmly. "You saw a desperate mother, and you chose to see the person, not just the crime. That took courage, too." After they left, James returned to his post in the East Gallery, the same spot where everything had started 6 months ago. The palace was quiet again, peaceful. His radio crackled. "Whitmore, report to the private sitting room." James made his way back upstairs. When he entered, the Queen was alone, the tea things cleared away. "Mr. Whitmore," she said, "I wanted to thank you privately. What you did that night, bringing this to my attention. showing compassion when rules said otherwise. It reminded me why I do what I do, Your Majesty. I should thank you, no, the Queen interrupted gently. We helped each other that night. You reminded me to look beyond protocol. I was able to help Emma. Miss Harrington learned that there are still people who care. Emma survived. Everyone won, because one person chose to break the rules for the right reason. She touched the brooch on her cardigan. This little heart has witnessed so much history. Royal ceremonies. State occasions. But I think its most important moment was the night it taught us all about mercy. James nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. Continue being the kind of guard who sees people, not just posts, the Queen said. The kind who knows when rules matter and when humanity matters more. That's what makes you exceptional. As James left the Queen's residence that evening, walking through the grand corridors of Buckingham Palace, he thought about how one choice, the choice to care about a stranger's pain, had changed everything. Miss Harrington had her daughter back. Emma had her life back. The Queen had been reminded of her purpose, and James had learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose compassion over protocol. The Cullinan V heart brooch remained pinned to the Queen's cardigan that night, over her heart, right where it belonged. A reminder that the most valuable treasures aren't made of gold and diamonds. They're made of courage, compassion, and the willingness to help someone in their darkest hour, even if it means breaking the rules, even if it means risking everything, because some things are worth more than protocol. Some things are worth more than treasure, and sometimes the most royal thing you can do is simply to care.